Welcome back to KAHI. I'm Wes Woodland, and here's another episode of Sierra Gold coming right at you. I have a local legend back in town. His name is Frank Nissen, correct?
That's right.
That's right. And this guy, he's another Placer alum. Shout out to the Hillman faithful. Class of 61 in the house today. This gentleman is pretty legendary. He had quite the career, 15 years at Disney, and he actually directed 2 movies. He directed Cinderella 3 and Pooh's Heffalump movie. He's working on a new project that I think our audience is going to be really excited to hear about. It's about a gentleman named Richard Barter who went and was dubbed the name Rattlesnake Dick. Could you tell us a little bit about this?
About the project or about him?
Well, about him or the project, whatever you want to share.
He's quite a touchstone. He's kind of a local notoriety. The thing that's interesting is that we don't know very much about him. So the project that I'm involved with a friend of mine who's a alumnus of 62, we're trying to sort of flesh out the bones, as it were. There is very little known about him, but what we're trying to do is to make him a centerpiece around a larger kind of history of bringing back the juice, as it were, of the history of the area.
Sure, and to put it into context, we're talking, what years are we talking?
The early gold rush years, the 1850s, from 1850 to about 1856.
And where did this gentleman come from?
Richard Barter?
Yeah.
He came from Canada, actually. His family ended up in Sweet Home, Oregon, and he was 17 at the time when he came down here. And he landed in Rattlesnake Bar, which is just down the road from town, with his brother and another family member. And he was on the straight and narrow for the first few years, but then things went awry, and he became a bandit and eventually got the name of Rattlesnake Dick.
And I'm assuming, we're talking pre-Folsom Dam, so
yeah.
the river racing through
bit.
there, and so we have a lot of these Murderers Bar and all these. I actually hiked Euchre Bar recently. So not a good guy, or was a good guy?
Well, that's what's interesting about him, was that he didn't start out to be a bad guy. He was just very enthusiastic and very impressionable. He was a young man at 17, and he just had a couple of bad breaks, and he tried to go straight, and fate wouldn't let him, so he decided to give in to fate. And he said, well, if everybody thinks of me a bandit, I might as well be a bandit. And he basically robbed stages. We don't really know a lot of the details. We're fairly certain that he didn't actually kill anybody, but he met his end up in what would become the Rayleigh's parking lot, which at the time was 1.5 miles out of town. And you think about that, wait a minute, Rayleigh's is in town, but in 1856,
yep,
Auburn was a few buildings down in the bottom of a draw, and where Rayleigh's is now was out of town.
I recently, to put it in perspective, I love Iowa Hill, and I read an article recently, literally today, that said that the stagecoach from Iowa Hill to Auburn was a 14-hour journey.
Yep.
You put that in perspective.
Unpaved roads.
14 hours right now, you can hop on a plane in Sac and be in Rome.
Yep,
to put
that's
perspective
right.
on the technology that's come along here.
Yeah.
So what drew you to this guy?
The contradictions, the fact that he had been a bandit for probably 6 years or so, and yet his sister, who was still up in Oregon, was still writing him, saying, please come home, please go on the straight and narrow. And it was obvious, and he was known for being a correspondent, and it's obvious from that we can infer that he was still corresponding with his sister all the years that he was being a bandit. So
there's, to me, that says there's quite a level of education and smarts
and family commitment.
Yep.
So he wasn't just your, two-dimensional bad guy. He was a very interesting guy. He had a note in his hand, according to the sources, that said, Rattlesnake Dick dies but never surrenders, as all good Britons do. And you say, wait a minute, Britons? Well, in fact, in 1850, he would have considered himself a Briton because he came from Quebec, and Canada was still a British colony in 1850. So he would have considered himself a Briton.
Right.
But like so many other hundreds of thousands of people who came from all corners of the world to participate in the gold rush, he was just one of a world population. So he would have still thought of himself as a Briton.
Yep.
So,
You had mentioned, and I got to get this out there, he had a couple gangs?
he was a young man, but he, on two different occasions, managed to persuade hardened guys who were much further down the road than he was, to go with him and be a gang. And one was before Shasta and after Shasta, which is a whole other part of his story.
Which, for our audiences out there, he did kind of go up to Lake Shasta region for a couple years.
He tried to lay low. He was accused falsely, it turned out. He was accused of stealing, and he was acquitted. But he decided he wanted to make a fresh start, so he went up north to Shasta County, and somebody followed him up there eventually and pointed him out, and that was the end of it. He had to become a bandit.
And then he did come back to this region, though.
That's right. He set up a headquarters in Folsom, we don't know exactly where, and assembled a second gang and went on his banditing ways.
And I know we got to wrap this up now, but the story is quite riveting. There's twists and turns, and there's loots of gold in this.
Oh, yeah.
Frank is putting this in as a book, or...
We're hoping that it'll be have several different platforms, as it were. Right now, I'm just working on what I call a set of letters that will tell us about him through other people's points of view.
And in the process, are we halfway there, or are we just kind of beginning the journey of trying to put this to life?
I'd say we're a third of the way there.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Everyone have an amazing Saturday. Thank you, Frank, for joining me in studio. That's going to do it for this episode of Sierra Gold. Check us out online at sierragold.tv. I'm Wes Woodland. Have a great day, and we're off to commercial now. Thank you.